So after your permission, I'm going to record this meeting so we can also share it with other members who couldn't attend the meeting. So basically, as I mentioned, from the test surveys and polls, I went to the polls section, and this is where I created my different pool of questions for each lecture that I have. This is my recommendation that everyone start doing this from now for the final exam, because it takes time. Creating these questions takes time, and for me right now, I'm ready for the parasitology course, because from this pool I can create my test, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so for example, lecture 1, I have created here 16 questions I included for lecture 1, and 16 questions for lecture 8, and 14 for 7, and so on. So the way to create a poll, I'm not going to be able to open my polls here because for the privacy of the questions, I cannot reveal those polls. But if I want to edit one of those polls, basically you just need to click on this small arrow, and it's going to show this screen. And here, if I click edit, it's going to open my questions, my 16 questions that I added to this poll, and then I can edit them one by one. Okay, but I'm not going to open this poll because, as I said, for the privacy of the question. But I'm going to show you how to create a new one. So from here, from polls, you can say build poll. Okay, and you can call it or name it whatever you want. So I'm going to call it testing. You can give it a description. You can put instructions for the students, but it's not mandatory. The only mandatory thing here is just to give it a name. For me, I put the name as the name of the sessions or the different lectures I give for the parasitology course. From here, I'm going to click submit. So this is now going to be my poll, for example, for lecture 1. Okay. From here, you can then start creating the questions for the poll. And as you can see, that you have a long list of questions here. The focus of this session today, I'm going to focus on multiple choice questions. Okay, and please distinguish between multiple answer and multiple choice. Multiple answer is when you give the student the choice of giving multiple answers to the question, like choosing 2 or 3 correct answers. Okay. But multiple choice, you only give the student the right to choose 1 correct answer. Okay. Tomorrow, inshallah, we're going to try to cover how to create short answers. Okay. So I'm going to click on multiple choice. So this is the screen for creating a multiple choice question in the poll that I've created. So you can give it a title, but it's not mandatory. The mandatory things is the things that are indicated by this astronaut mark. Okay, those are the mandatory things. So here you're going to start creating your questions. So this is going to be my first question. So I'm just going to call it question 1. Okay, and from here, by the way, you can add different things. You can add YouTube videos. You can add. You can share a link. You can insert a file or a picture. Okay, this is for inserting files. Here you can insert pictures. Okay. And the recommendation from EduTech is to use 400 by 300 pixels size images if you want to insert images, because I know some people and they might want to share their experience with us after we finish explaining how to create an MCQ. Or actually, anyone can interrupt at any point. But we're going to talk later about the issues that some people when the students try to open the pictures, it was present or to some students, and it was not presented to other students. The EduTech feedback is that is the size of the image. If the size of the image is too big, then some students might not see the image. So, and their recommendation is to use 400 by 300 size. Actually, if I open the image here for you, just to show you how you can choose. So from here, you can browse your computer and choose the image that you would like to insert. And here, you actually can also select the dimension. Here, you can specifically say that I'm going to make it 400 by 300, which is the recommendation of the EduTech, and you can click insert. Okay, so this way you can insert images. There are so many other options, adding tables, like changing the font, highlighting, and so on. This is another important point here that was very helpful for me, is this icon here, which is remove formatting. Because the recommendation of EduTech is not to copy and paste text in like for example, I had my exams in Word documents and I want to convert them or put them into Blackboard. So the EduTech is not recommending to copy and paste, because you're going to copy and paste the format, the font size as well, and all of this. If you want to get rid of this, what I did in my case, because copying and pasting is easier than writing every single question that I have. So what I did is I select my question and then I just click on this remove formatting. So it removes all the formats. If there is a highlight, if there is like font, different fonts that you're using, different size of font, you can remove all of those formats by using remove formatting. Okay. So this is for entering the question or writing the question. The next important thing here is this part, which is the options. The only thing that I choose here is that show answers in random order. By choosing this, the students, when they see the options, or each student is going to see the options or the correct answer, the options or the distractor of the question at random arrangement. Okay. So for example, option A or answer A, it's going to be for another student. Answer 2 or answer 1 is going to be for other students. Answer 2 and 3 and so on. So it's going to show the answers to the students at random, and this is also the recommendation of the EduTech, and I also highly recommend choosing this one, which is showing the answers in random orders. Okay. The other ones here is about answering numbering. You can put numbers, number 1, 2, 3, or ABC, and so on. I recommend not putting anything, because as I'm going to show you later during the exam, in front of each option, the student actually he's going to have like a small circle like this, and he's going to choose the correct answer. So you don't have to put it actually in numbers or in letters. For me, I don't use it. Okay, you can show the answers in vertical or horizontal. You can allow partial credits, but again, all of those options I'm not using. For my exams, I'm using only show answers in random order. Okay, so here is the answers that you're going to start entering for each question. So here I'm just going to write option 1. Option 1 here is going to be my correct answer. This is how you select the correct answer, by selecting this this small circle here. Like if I select it here on number 2, it means number 2 is the correct answer for this question. Okay. If I select number 1, it means number 1 is the correct answer, and so on. Again, there are so many things you can put here in options. Okay. So, and this is my option 2. Option 3. Option 4. Okay, and there are so many other things that you can do, such as feedback. You can give the students feedback for every question they put for every answer. Like, but this is maybe for feedback assessment, for continuous assessment more than like midterm and final exams, or than actual exams. This is like if the student he gives certain answer, you can say that this answer is correct because this and this, or this answer is wrong. So this is like, again, these options I don't use for feedback, but this is now I put my options here in the question, and I put my question in this box here. Okay, I just called it question 1. So if there's 2 options here in the poll. You can either submit and create another question, or you can if I just click submit, it means I finished creating the pool of questions. If I want to submit more questions, I'm gonna click this option, which is for submit and creating another question. Okay, if I want to add more questions. So for now, I'm gonna just click submit, and this is gonna be my question 1. Okay, so this is the pool of questions that I have. I can add as many questions as I want. I can add question 2, 3, 4, 10 questions, 50 questions, whatever. You can put all of your questions in one pool. You can do the same as what I did, creating multiple pools. And the reason I create, I'm just going to go back to my pools again. The reason why I created multiple pools, because at the final exam, when I create the test, I want to select, like, for example, equivalent number of questions from each pool or from each lecture. Like, for example, I want to choose 5 questions from each lecture. So later, when I create the test, I'm going to show you how to do that. But it's going to be easier for me to select for 5 questions this way from each lecture than by creating different pools. Then if I create just one pool that include all of my lectures and all of my MCQs, it's going to be difficult for me to decipher or to decide which questions belong to lecture 1 and 2 and so on. Okay, so I recommend creating multiple pools for different lectures that you have. Okay, so now this is about creating the pool. How you create the pool. As I mentioned, you go from here, build pool, you give the pool the name that you want, and you start entering the questions. And now this is the pool of questions that I have. Okay, this is the one that I just created. It's called testing. Okay, so now we're going to move to the second part, which is creating the test. Okay, again, we're going to go to test, surveys, and polls. Do we have any questions so far regarding the polls? You can raise your hand, or Dr. Muhammad, do you have any comments so far?
لا go ahead يا محمد. نشوف الجروب الثاني. أنا أشوف إنه بس نهاية the pool. How you finish the polling, because you just mentioned one. Just continue. I think if you can go to the pool itself.
The problem, if I open one of those polls, it has the exam questions in it. But I can create another poll for you. Like, I'm going to call it testing 2, and maybe testing 2 and testing 3, and show you how to select. Then when you create the test, how do you select from these polls? I can do it very quickly. So here, let's call this testing 2. Submit. Create question, multiple choice. Another thing that I can also mention here, that actually you can also import questions like this. If this is my second poll, so there is an icon here. It says find questions. If you click in this one, okay. Again, if I click on any of those polls, it's going to open my questions that I have them saved, but I cannot do that because of the privacy. But I can say this is the testing one that I just created, okay? And I want to copy some questions from this pool into the second one, okay? So I'm going to click this question and say submit. Okay, so now the question that I created in pool 1 is imported into pool 2. Okay, of course I don't do this because different pools or different lectures, they have different questions. So for each pool actually, or for each lecture, I create new questions. I go to MCQs. As I said, I have my MCQs ready in Word documents, so I copy and paste from Word documents, and I remove the formatting, as I mentioned, by clicking this item, remove formatting. It's better for me than like actually, again, writing each question. But I'm going to call this, like, for example, question 3. Again, I'm going to select random answers. I'm going to say this is answer 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in this time, I'm going to say that answer 4, for example, is the correct one. So I'm going to submit that. Okay. So now I have 2 pool of questions. Okay. The other thing that you can do within the pool is also from the pool, you can decide how many points you want to give to those questions. Actually, not from here, from here. Okay. So from here, you can also say that the default pool for this question is 10 marks, for example, okay? This question number 3 also is another 10 marks. So this is now in this created pool, which is pool called testing number 2. I have 2 questions, okay? Question number 1 and question, I call it just question 3, and I give them 10 marks for each question. Also, you can do, to make it easier, you can select all of the questions by using this icon and change the points. Like, for example, if I want to change them to 1 point, I'm going to change it to 1 point here and click update. So now both questions, they're going to have 1 point. Okay. Up to now, we're still talking about the pool. Okay. So I created now pool 1 and pool 2, and I create, as I mentioned, as many pools as I want. For me, for my course, for the parasitology course, I created again a pool for every lecture that I have. Why? Because as I mentioned, when I go to the test, as I'm going to show you, I can select how many questions I want from each lecture, okay? Just to make sure that there is a fair distribution between the different lectures, between the number of questions from each lecture. So now I'm going to show you how to create test, okay? So again, from course tools, scroll to test, surveys, and pools. Okay, so we finished from talking about pools. The second part of this session is going to be about talking how to create a test now. So this is for the page for creating tests. This is different tests that I created for my course, for the parasitology course. So I gave my students maybe 5 quizzes, and I made just 1 makeup quiz because I had 2 students who were absent. But basically, these are my quizzes that I created for my exam. You can also create, like, I call them quizzes, but here you can create also your final examination as well. Okay. So from here, you're gonna go from tests. You're gonna go to build a test. You're gonna give it a name. Let's call it, like, for example, final exam. And this is the only mandatory part you have to fill for this exam. You can give it a description. You can in here. You can give the students instruction as well in this box. But the mandatory part is just for this page is for now just to give it a name. And I wouldn't pay much attention to this right now. During the final exam, or when I show you also how to deploy a test, you can also write a description or instructions to the students during the deployment. So the deployment is going to be the third and the last part of this session. So we talked about creating a pool. Now we're talking about how to create a test on an exam. The third part is how to deploy a test and what's the deployment options. So now this is the final exam test that I've created. I'm going to click submit. Again, similar to the page of the pool, you're going to have a similar page here. Either you can create test questions again directly within that test. Again, you can click a multiple choice question here and start entering the question. It's the same format, the same page, same everything, the same as what I did in the pool. You can do it here and enter the question manually. If I want to import the questions now from the pool that I created, as I mentioned, here now you're going to go to reuse question and go to the find questions. Okay. I'm not sure if you see the screen. I'm going to change the screen. Okay, so this is the, are you seeing it? You're supposed to see the screen now of the different pools that I have for this, for the parasitology course, okay? So again, we entered the test, and from the test, we chose the icon where it says reuse test items, or reuse question, and then we clicked find questions, and it showed this screen. Okay, so here on the left side, I have the different pools that I've created for the course. Again, I cannot select one of the parasitology icons because it's going to show the questions that I entered for this course. So I cannot show it for the privacy of the course. But I can click on these that I just created, testing. So if I click on testing 1, it's going to show this the questions that I entered for this pool. Okay, so here I entered 1 question. I'm going to select this 1 question for my final examination. Okay, and then I'm going to remove this one and click also on testing number 2. Okay, this is the second pool that I created, and from here I can click these 2. Okay, or I can just click. I can click here on the top, and it's going to select all of the questions that I have in this page. Okay, now I'm going to switch screen again. Okay, so now in the test, I have, this is the test that I created, in which I imported the questions from 2 different pools. Okay, the first pool had this question, okay, question 1, and the second pool it had 2 more questions. Okay, so now I imported 3 different questions within this for the final exam. Okay, and from here again you can also determine how many points you want to give to each question. If you see here on the right side, it says 10 points for the, it was by default it was placed for this question 10 points. This is the 1 point that we put previously for these 2 questions that we made, 1 point and 1 point. If you want to change all of them, you just go here and select all. So it's going to select all questions for me. And then you can say how many points you want to put for each question. If I chose, for example, if I put 2 marks or 3 marks, whatever the points that you want to put for each question, you can then update. So it's going to update the points for all questions that I selected, okay, in the test. So by this, we covered now how to create a pool, okay, and as I recommended I prefer creating different pools for the different lectures that you have. If you want to select equivalent number of MCQs from each lecture, and we talked about how to create a test, okay, utilizing the pools that we have created. You can create the test directly if you want, even without like creating a pool. You can create a test directly, as I mentioned, by going here and choosing the type of the question that you want to enter, which is, for example, multiple choice, and start entering the questions right inside your test. But if you want to create a bank of questions and to use it, like I created the bank of questions because I was using those bank for the quizzes, and I'm going to use the same bank but different MCQs for my final exam. So this is why I created the pool. But you can skip the pool part and create an exam directly into inside the test option. Okay. And one last thing to mention about the test. Regarding finding questions, you can also not just select from the pool, you can also select from the tests. Like if, for example, I created here different quizzes for my students previously, quiz 1 through 5, I can actually even click on one of those and it's going to show me, again, let me just switch the screen. So now this is the screen after I clicked selecting from or reusing questions. You can select either, as I mentioned, from the pools that you created, or you can select also from previously created exams as well, or tests. So this is the different quizzes that I created for my students from 1 to 5. I can click on any of those, or I can click here all tests. It's going to show all the questions that I used in these previous tests, and I can select my questions from them as well. So by this, we finished talking about how to create a pool and how to create a test. Okay, moving to the last part, then we're going to move to your questions and to your experience, if you have any issues and so on. So the last part is, as I mentioned, is we're going to talk about the test deployment options. And this is going to be very quick, inshallah. So I'm going to click OK here. So this is my final exam here. It was created, but not deployed yet. Okay, these are my previous assessment that I did for my students for the parasitology course. Okay, and it says it was deployed and the date, the last date it was edited, and where it was deployed. Like it was, for example, here it was deployed. These quizzes was deployed in the assignment section. Okay, so when the students they open the assignment, they see these, they saw these tests and they conducted these tests. But for these two are not deployed. The one that I just created, the final exam, is not deployed yet. So how to deploy a test? Basically, deploying a test, you can go to assignments. Of course, assignments here, it can be changed. Like when we get to the final exams, I can rename assignments and call it, for example, final exam. Okay, and removing all the contents, or create a new icon here for the final exam. And just like one quick information here, you can hide all of those by clicking here. Like when it's time for final exam, you can actually, from here, by clicking this option, you can choose hide link and hide all of those icons and leave only the icon, one or two icons that you want the students to see during the final exam. For example, we were thinking about creating an icon for attendance and another icon for example, for final exam. So the student will choose the attendance icon and sign in his attendance 15 minutes before the final exam, and then another icon for the final exam where he chooses it and then start answering his final exam. So again, but this is the icons that I have right now. So I'm going to go to assignments. And here I can build, as you can see, here is the different assignments that I give to my students, including the different quizzes. Okay, quiz 2, quiz 3, 4, 5. And here I put, like in this quiz, I put instructions in Arabic for my students before they start their quiz. Okay, so again, from assignments, or if you want to change it then later on to final examination, here you can deploy the test. You're going to go to the assessments icon and choose test, and it's going to show you the test that it was not deployed yet. It was not utilized or deployed yet. So here I'm going to choose, for example, final exam that I just created, and then I'm going to click submit. At this screen, it's going to show me the test options. Okay, so the name of the test. If you want to put description, so you can put your description here, or your instructions for the exam. You can put your instructions here for the students. And here, I usually check this option, which is open the test in a new window. I usually click yes to allow the student, when the student start the test, a new window is gonna open for the student in the Chrome browser, and showing the first page of the test. Okay, so this is open test in a new window. I usually check yes. Make the test available to student. You have to click this one as yes. Otherwise, the students will not be able to see the test. Creating announcement. You can also create an announcement for the test. Okay, that it's going to appear to the students. But when you click these two options, you have to, I'm going to talk later on about choosing the date and the time. You have to choose the date and the time when the test will appear to the students. So even if you click yes here, from this, if you click yes and you did not choose the date and the time for the test, the exam is going to appear right away to the students. It's going to be present in Blackboard right away. What you want to do after you click yes for these two is to choose the date and the time when this test should be displayed for the student, which is the timing for the exam, according to the schedule. Here, if you should not use this, the multiple attempts should not be utilized because by default, if you did not choose it, it means that the student he only have one chance to conduct the exam. Okay, if you choose multiple attempts, here you are allowing the student to conduct or to do the exam multiple times, either unlimited times, or you can even choose how many times you want him to conduct the exam. But this is actually an option that we don't want to do, whether in quizzes or either final exams. We don't want to allow the students to conduct multiple attempts, so don't check this one. Forced completion, this is another very important thing to choose, because if you do not click forced completion, what's going to happen is that the student, he can enter and exit from the exam as many times as he wants. He can, like, for example, answer one question or two questions and then exit from the exam and go like wherever he wants to go. He can, like, for example, go and look for answers for the questions and come back and log in, and then he's going to continue the exam if you did not choose forced completion. When you choose forced completion, it means that once the student starts the exam, he must complete the exam in one sitting. Another important option here to choose is to select a timer. Okay, so setting a timer. By default here it's set to 60 minutes. For example, I want to make it 60 minutes or more for the students. I can change the time from here. So it's important again for timed exams to set the timer. If we did not set a timer, again the student can do the exam. Even if you put forced completion, the student, he can like have his screen open the whole day answering the questions if you did not set the timer. So setting the timer is another important option. Another important option here is to select, after you set the time, is to turn on the auto submit. What's the benefit of auto submit is because after the timer is finished, then the exam will be submitted automatically, okay, without the student having to submit it manually from his side. If you turn it off, it means that the student, after he finishes his exam, he has to click submit on his screen. Otherwise, it's not going to show in your grading center in your Blackboard. So you have to click auto submit and choose on, keep it on, so that after the timer finish, this the exam is going to be submitted automatically. Another important information here is when the exam is going to be displayed, okay, and it's going to be displayed for how long. This is it's going to be upon the agreement of the college, okay. But if we said that this exam is going to be conducted, for example, tomorrow, okay, and I'm going to conduct it tomorrow at, for example, 2 p.m. and make sure that you don't get confused here between AM and PM. So if I'm going to conduct it at 2 p.m. So the exam is going to appear to the students in Blackboard at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Before that, the students, he cannot enter and he cannot see the exam. The other important thing here is this exam is going to be displayed until when? So we said that this exam is going to be deployed tomorrow by April 16 at 2 p.m. The question here is how long you're going to allow the student to enter the exam. Are you going to give him 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, and so on? This is where you decide how long you're going to allow the student to enter the exam. In my opinion, maybe 10 minutes is enough for the students to enter the exam. So I would choose, for example, 10 minutes. Well, let's give it, for example, 15 minutes, okay? So it means that the student, he has from 2 p.m. up to 10:15 p.m. to enter the exam. If after 2:15 p.m. The exam is not going to be, it's not going to appear actually it's going to disappear from the student screen and from the student Blackboard, so he cannot see the exam anymore after 2:15 p.m. So this is, again, it depends on the decision of the college that we're going to discuss it with the academic affair and decide how long we're going to allow the students to enter the exam. This is the password. I only used it, like, for example, if I want the exam, certain students to take the exam. For example, if I have some makeup students and I don't want the rest of the students to know or to enter the exam, I can set a password and enter a password for that exam and give it only to the students who are supposed to conduct a makeup examination. So this is the only option, this is the only time that I used utilizing password, okay, for makeup examination. Here you can add some exceptions, and this is another important icon. Basically here, what this allow you to do, if you have a student who came in late, for example, after 10-15 minutes, and he has a valid justification. For example, he had some a problem with the internet, he got disconnected, or even in the middle of the exam, he got disconnected and he was kicked out of the exam. This is where you can allow such students to enter the exam again by adding users or groups. Which is basically it's named test availability exceptions here. So again, this is where you allow your students who came in late or who were kicked out from the exam to enter the exam. Basically, you're gonna click on add user or groups. Here I can choose my students who had the problems. For example, this student and this student, they had a problem. I'm gonna enter them in the exception. And here you're gonna see the options. So again, here you're gonna decide how long you're gonna allow this student to enter the exam. If the student came in late and it was the student's fault, for example, and you want to deduct time, okay, you don't want to allow the students to go in the exam for 60 minutes like his colleagues. You want to give him only, for example, 40 minutes. You can decide from this screen, okay, from the exceptions. I'm only going to allow the student to enter the exam for 40 minutes. I can also choose again the availability. The availability is going to be the same as here, but you can give him like exceptional availability, okay, and change the date and the time for that specific student. Here again, auto submit is clicked and force completion is clicked by default because I choose it here in the top. Due date, according to the EduTech, it's not recommended to use due date because it's going to create some errors in the system. You can read about due date and what's the important of your due date if you're interested, but it's not. Don't use it. It's not recommended by EduTech. What's recommended is to use when the test is going to be displayed, and the test is going to be displayed until what time. This is the last part of the basically test deployment options. Basically here is that this is where the students gonna see their score. When they're gonna see their score, if you want to hide the score from them or not. If you want to hide the score of that test, first of all, uncheck this one, because this one it says the score per question. So from here they're gonna know which questions they got it correct and which questions they got it wrong. So it's going to give them a description with the scores of all of their questions that they answered. So I would uncheck this one. Here, when the student can see his results, if you leave it as it is by default after submission, once the student he finish doing his exam, he's going to see his score right away. You can choose one-time view that he's going to see it one time, but if you want to leave it hidden, that after the exam, especially for final exams, for example, and you want to keep it hidden until the exam scores are finalized and then released officially through, for example, SIS and so on, you can change this, like you can say after the availability end date, and you can choose, for example, what date, or Or you can say, like, for example, after attempts are graded. Okay. So what I'm trying to say here is try to choose an option that does not allow the student to see his grades. And actually from the grading center, which is another session that we're going to conduct on Sunday, from the grading center, I can go and hide the grade for that exam. And if I hide it from there, from the grading center, it's not going to show to them when they finish entering the exam. So that's going to be discussed later when we talk about on Sunday on the grading center. The last part of the test deployment is basically these options, which are very, very important. Again, according to the EduTech and university recommendation, is if you leave it by default, all questions is going to appear at the same time of the student. Okay, and this can allow for like cheating, for example, that the students can get the answers from each other if all the questions are shown at the same time. So if you have, like, for example, 50 questions, if you leave it as it is, all 50 questions is going to be shown at one screen or on one page. If you choose one at a time, what's going to happen here is that each question is going to be presented alone, okay, separately from the others, which is, I believe it's an important choice or option to choose. Another important choice is the prohibit backtracking, that the student only can move forward and he cannot go backward to the answers or to the questions that he already answered. Okay, and this is very important to orient the students about that. If by mistake they skip questions, they cannot go back to these previous questions. Again, the point of doing this is to minimize cheating between students, because if the student can go back and forth between the questions, there is going to be no difference between if you leave it one at a time, if you make all the questions appear at the same time. Okay, so I recommend that you prohibit backtracking and only one question is shown at a time. This can minimize the cheating chances. The last option is the randomized question. Is basically, again, this is also to randomize cheating, is by randomizing the questions between the students. I highly also recommend this one, is by clicking this one, each student, he's gonna have random set of question or random arrangement of question appear to him, okay? So student A, B, and C, and so on, each one of them, Muhammad, Khalid, and so on, each one of them, he's gonna start with a different set of questions, okay? The arrangement of the questions that's gonna appear to him one by one. It's going to be different from one student to another. Again, it's another feature that can minimize cheating between students. So by this, we finish filling all the options. Just quickly again, we make the test in a new window. We made the test available. We put an announcement for the test. We made the test, we checked the forced completion. We set the timer. We choose the date and the time when the test is going to be deployed or appear to the student, and it's going to be appear for how long, for 10, 15, 20 minutes or so on. Here, as I mentioned, from the exceptions, I can add students who are late to the exam or students who got disconnected during the exam, and from here I can remove those exceptions, okay, by just clicking on this X. Here, it's important to leave this by default as it is to allow the marks of the exam to go to the grading center. So don't change this one, keep it as it is for the grading center score in order for the exam scores to go to the grading center. And as I mentioned here, change the option to make the test or the grade does not appear, and also go from the grading center and hide the exam results or score from the students if you don't want the students to see it. And the last part here, we chose one question at a time, we prohibit backtracking, and we randomized the questions. Okay, so I'm going to show you that the test here is going to be shown at the bottom of my assignments. As you can see here, the final exam. So it says here the availability, the item is going to be hidden from the students, and it's going to be only available after April 16, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Okay. Two quick things here is by, first of all, you can bring this to the top, either manually or either by drag it, or either you can go from here and go to the final exam and bring it to the top. Or as I mentioned, you can eliminate everything else and keep just the final exam for them. If you want to edit this final exam, I'm almost done, like maybe 5 minutes, I'm going to be done with this tutorial. So from here, I can edit. If I click this arrow, I can edit the test. I can edit each question, okay? I can update the points for this test, okay? And then click OK. Also, I can change the options, the deployment options that I just did. I can, by clicking this small arrow, I can go to the test options and again change the test options here, the description, or if I want to change the date and the time, the force completion, any of those settings can be changed by clicking this small arrow from here. Okay, edit the test option. And there are other options you can, if you're interested, you can look, check them out. But basically, this exam is going to be deployed at this date. One last important thing for here, or a couple of important points, is basically, as an instructor, I see this exam right now. The student, he doesn't see it. Okay, so I can click on the exam, and it's going to bring me the screen that the student is going to see. So as you saw, it opened the exam in the new window for me. Okay, and I can begin the exam. The students, they're going to start having a timer in here. Okay, the timer is going to start showing for the students, and it's going to be forced completion, as I mentioned. So from this option, by doing this, I can see how the exam is going to be presented to the students. I can see the questions. Basically, the student, he has to choose the right answer here, and the answer is going to be saved automatically. And then he go to the next question, then choose the answer and click next. And this is the third, for example, third screen, and then he's gonna save and submit. If the student even did not save and submit and the timer finished, as I mentioned, it's since we clicked the auto submit option, the exam is going to be submitted automatically. Okay, so here it's going to give him the information about the exam, when the exam was started, when it was finished, the student name, and so on. When the student click on OK, if you allow the students to view the score, after clicking OK, he's going to be able to view his scores. As you can see from this image here, or from this page, I've got 0 point out of 9. I got them all wrong. Anyhow, so basically, and this is how long it took me to see to do the test. So this is what the student gonna get if you leave the options as it is. Okay, so you need to change the options. And as I mentioned, you need to go to the grading center and choose hide student grades. Okay, for this test, let me show you that. This is just quickly how to hide the grade from a test. This is the grades for some of my students for the quizzes that they took. So this is the final exam that the students that I just created. If you click on this arrow and say for the final exam, hide from, this is from instructor, hide from students. So if I click hide from students here, as you can see this mark here, it means that the students are not going to be able to see their grades. So after they finish even doing the exam, their grades is not going to appear to them by doing this from the grade center. Okay, you go here to grade center and you click hide from student view. Okay, from the grading center. The last part also in the grading center is how do you monitor your students when they conduct the exam. So similarly, when you go from the grading center to the test, as I just did, you can see your students here, and I can also change the view where I can see all of my students. So here now I'm going to see all of my students. Okay, and as you can see, let's go to the final exam that I just created. The students didn't take the exam yet, so there is no grades yet for the students. But when they start doing the exam, a blue mark is going to start, a blue circle mark is going to show here, telling you that the students are currently doing the exam. And after they submit their answers, or after the time finish and you have an automatic submission turned on, you're going to see the grades of the students in here. But again, if you hide it from the students, you're going to be able to see it, but the students are not going to be able to see it, which is a very important thing to do, especially for final exams. By this, we finish our tutorial. If you have any questions, or if anyone wants to share his experience with us. They can either raise their hand or they can talk directly.
السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام. هلا استاذ فهد.
يعطيك العافية معك أستاذ.
الله يعافيك.
Tutorial. Thank you so much for that. So we faced a problem even today with the online quizzes with our students. So basically the problem is they can exceed their time. I mean, the allocated time, which is 20 minutes, it can be exceeded, and I cannot understand why. I mean, we put the exam or the quiz to start at 10 and to finish by 10:20. It seems that they can stay until like 10:25, 10:30. So
you have two things here. In the quizzes that I conducted for my students, you have, first of all, you have the timer. You have to set up the timer for the students. If you did not set up the timer, as I mentioned, the student, they can continue forever. The other thing is that if for example, if I allow the students to enter the exam for example, 5 minutes or for 10 minutes, like if I said that the exam is going to start at 2 p.m. and I'm going to allow the students to enter the exam, as I mentioned, until 2:10 p.m., okay, for 10 minutes. So what happens if the student, he started the exam late, like he started, for example, at 10:05 or 10 or just 1 minute before the exam, before the deadline that you put, which is the 10 and 10 minutes, like if he 2 and 10 minutes, if he entered 2 p.m. and 9 minutes, he is still gonna get his 15 minutes. Even if you've set the timer to 15 minutes, he's still gonna get his 15 minutes. Okay, so his colleagues, they might already, some of his colleagues who started at 2 p.m. sharp, they're gonna finish the quiz, for example, in 15 minutes, if you allow them just for 15 minutes. But the person who started the quiz later, for example, 5 minutes later, he's going to finish his quiz after 15 minutes, which is going to be 2:20 p.m., for example. Okay, so he's going to finish his quiz 5 minutes after his colleagues. So this is the thing that you cannot totally control in Blackboard. You only can set the timer, how long you want the student to stay in the exam, and you have to give the student some, for example, especially for the final exam, you have to give the student some room to enter the exam. If the internet connection is late, or for some reason he got delayed for a few minutes, we have to allow the students at least minimum for 10 minutes. But these 10 minutes is going to allow him to stay for 10 additional minutes beyond his colleagues who started at the time.
We take care of all things you have said. المشكلة بس هل الدue date will affect that, because we have chosen the due date? Could it be the problem? Because you just now, you don't recommend us to use the due date. Do you think that's the problem?
According to my understanding from EduTech, that the due date is not gonna again change anything. That even if the student again started his like 5 minutes after the start of the quiz, the due date still is not going to prohibit the student to continue for his full time. Again, for example, if you set the timer or the due date that the exam is going to finish, or the due date is 10:15, and the student, he entered the exam at 10. Sorry, let me just say it again. If you set the due date at 2 p.m. and 15 minutes, and the student, he entered the exam at 2 p.m. and 5 minutes, he's still gonna get his 15 minutes again. The due date is not gonna stop the student from getting his 15 minutes. That's the problem. But the due date, I think it created a problem according to EduTech, in which the score, it does not show for you in the Blackboard. You don't see the score, you see like an error, and you have to enter for all of those students who have this error. You have to enter manually, and